Jose Jaime Guerrero.
Perfect.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah.
So we're talking about friendship. It's the Friendship Bootcamp podcast. And thank you so much for being on the show as our first guest. And you're kind enough to express interest in a few different questions, and we're going to break these into different episodes, like I was saying. And I want to give the introduction here. Jose blends his 14 years experience as a registered clinical counselor with over 30 years of chartered accounting financial background to promote and reach self-worth development and financial well-being as a twofold related outcome. He works with individuals, couples, and groups. And obviously you've dealt with friendship and friendship challenges, right? And so, and it's very interesting. I'm so glad that you agreed to or you express interest as well to be involved with the question of how can I deepen my friendships? Because I think it's one of the ones that I'm the most passionate about as well, right? I'm curious to know what the thought process, did that jump off the page as something you just like, yes, deepen, because I know that you're a deep guy. So there's got to be something to do with that. But here's my first question. Like, what does it really mean to have a deep friendship anyways, as opposed to, an average friendship, I guess?
I think that, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here with
You're
you.
welcome.
I think that what a deeper friendship or relationship means is an interaction where people have the courage to be authentic. I think also that in that interaction, there's safety and comfort of being vulnerable on both ends. And that takes us to the strength of acceptance. The acceptance to be and to let the other person be.
Yeah,
being in a place of safety, being in a place of comfort, right? I think also that a deep friendship entails flexibility, of course, and tolerance. I will say that those are ingredients, characteristics of what a deep friendship means. There's knowledge, right?
I like that. So well said, because things, like I always say, like friendship is so murky and it's not very well defined for a lot of people, right? So I think people don't know where they stand, and they don't know if the other person even wants to be deep, or, like you just know where you stand much more in a romantic relationship, right? So when things are defined more in the context of friendship, it makes everything easier.
I personally believe, and I don't know if I can say this right now, but I personally believe that friendship is kind of the ultimate expression of a loving relationship.
Wow.
Even though we're more vested or interested in romantic relationships because of our need of love and all that sort of thing, I believe that friendship is a little bit more refined. It goes further. Because then the interest and the needs are there, of course, in any interaction, but there's less interest. It's more sort of neutral. There's more purity.
Yeah.
If I can phrase it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like just human beings just haven't spent that much time on really taking friendship seriously.
That's right.
They've taken romantic love seriously and all the consumerism that goes along with that. But I mean, like, is there a friendship day? I don't know if there's a friendship day in any culture. Do you know of any? I don't even know. Yeah. So I think, it's undervalued, and that's the thing. So, okay, so what are the benefits of having a deeper friendship, Ricky?
I think that there are several. For me, the most important are the benefits of connection. We need that. Human beings are wired to connect. We as primates survived because we were able to connect. Without that ability, we wouldn't survive. So it enhances, it facilitates that need, that human specific need, the need of connection. I think it also fosters the capacity of acceptance, which, I mean, acceptance is the antidote of shame. And shame is one of the most pervasive emotions that human beings experience. So this sense of acceptance is very relevant, and it happens at an individual context, but I think that it manifests completely in an interaction with another human being. And I will say the third benefit, there are many more, but I think that these are the core, is it allows us to feel belonging somewhere. Or to someone. So if you put these benefits together, these are what I will call the antidotes, the most powerful antidotes of what kills human beings. And I wanted to say this at certain point, because I think that we can derive many things from what I'm going to tell you right now. There are 4 things that kill human beings. We are not manufactured. We're not tailored to deal with 4 things. And the first is a sense of failure, or in this case, shame, rejection, isolation, and loneliness. This is something that we, as primates, cannot manage. It destroys us. And it's embedded in our biology because we learn to survive precisely by bonding.
Absolutely.
You will never see a primate in the jungle by itself. They don't survive. And we're primates.
Yeah, I like that, because it shows you what you want less of and what you want more of.
Of course. And the benefits, really, it's the core or the essence, in my point of view, of your question. Friendship is the antidote of this.
Yeah. But people can also go into or be more interested in friendship because they don't want shame or failure or rejection or isolation, but they might not actually want to improve their friendship skills, because it does, I think, take work to do anything right?
Of course.
And so there's the thing. Yeah, I don't want shame, so I'm gonna try to have more and deeper friendships. But I mean, this is I sort of always go back and forth between an optimist and a pessimist sort of thing. But, or, in terms of just seeing people's situations of what they're working on, in terms of what they really want in their lives and how much they're willing to work for it, right? So I sort of see people they really want to have close friendships, but they don't necessarily spend that time and do the research or whatever it takes, right?
And the work.
Yeah, I mean, the work,
love is about work.
Why should it not be work? Everything is, that you do in life, you anyway. So you see clients that have issues with friendship, right?
Yeah, with friendship, with relationships, and friendship is a very powerful form of relationship, right?
So yeah, of course. And so do they ask you specifically sometimes, I've got these friends, I'm proud of the friends I have, but I'm not that deep, or I'd like to make them deeper. And what do you think their barriers are, their challenges are?
Well, I think that sometimes we are not that curious. We are very focused in ourselves, and the best ways, in my point of view, to deepen relationships are developing this sense of curiosity, curiosity of who is the other person, and also interest in the other person. So it helps to develop something that, in my point of view, is essential in human development, which is going beyond ourselves, transcend and go towards the land of the other.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that helps. I think that presence also helps to deepen relationships. I believe that friendship and relationships develop in 2 dimensions, which are time and space. So we cannot pretend to have a relationship or a deep relationship if we don't spend enough time.
Okay.
Or if we don't share space with a person. So presence is important. And I think also that what helps to deepen friendships is sharing. Sharing experiences, sharing time. And as I mentioned before, sharing spaces.
Yeah. Okay. And again, that's the thing. To be vulnerable, to be present. Well, I keep thinking about.
And apologies for interrupting
Sure.
because I forgot one point in what you mentioned, which is I think that something that helps to deepen a lot relationships is courage.
Yeah.
And it's the courage, as I mentioned before, of authenticity and acceptance. The courage to be and let the other person be.
Yeah,
as I mentioned before.
There's so much in there, and even just being in that present moment. And, but I don't know if you mentioned vulnerable, but I'm putting vulnerable in there because I feel like you're going to get to it eventually, right?
I think it's the courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah, courage to be vulnerable.
The courage to be entails accepting that we as human beings are vulnerable.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. You could be saying something that again, I was saying like there's really a vague friendship process for a lot of people, right? So you could sort of decide to take your friendship to the next level, a deeper stage, and say something that is pretty revealing, but you know that if they take it the right way, then it'll be a stronger friendship. But it might be too much information, right? And one of the biggest ones that come to mind is saying that you're depressed, because it's so much a stigmatizing thing, or it's so much of a taboo thing. So, but to say that you're depressed and for the other person to say, I know what you're talking about, and then you get into specifics, and now you've gotten away from shame around that topic. And, you know what I mean? So, but that's a risky one because it's so much, again, so much of a taboo, right, to say that. But I mean, it's almost like a gold medal you can get in a sort of friendship bonding experience, I think, to say that you've not just been depressed in your life, you're depressed 2 weeks ago, and this is specifically why.
It's situational, rather than chronic.
Because now it's because you could have this fear by saying, oh, this person who's a sort of a brand new friend, maybe in the friendship audition process still, might think that I get depressed all the time and that I'm going to be a burden to them. And so maybe I shouldn't say that till later,
or keep
it to myself. And then because there's part of that's part of the process, right? Because it's risk.
It's a risk, and also is, again, as I mentioned before, is the need to be perfect.
Yeah.
The need to be strong, which we can talk about later.
Yeah. Interesting. So do you have any personal experience to share on the topic of having challenges getting deeper with certain friends, maybe unexpected things you didn't think about, or you didn't know in advance? Because it's always good, I think, to bring. You don't have to mention any names or anything.
No. I understand. Well, I think that we all, at certain point in our lives, we have bad experiences, right? In or things go sometimes south, and I think that what prevents going to deeper friendships is fear. Fear of rejection is big, and that fear of rejection is doesn't allow us to connect. Sometimes we make assumptions of the other person, or we want to keep a lot of things in order to present certain image. And I think that another big roadblock in developing friendships is shame, the shame to be known. If people get to know me really, they might reject me. Because I am not that good. And if you see now, we're getting into this universal issue that we all are facing, and that is very reinforced in society, which is we're not that good. There's always missing, right? So I think that doesn't help. Competition could be, I think, competition in relationship could be in an issue. The need to prove who's better, who's right, who's wrong. Judgment.
Okay.
One thing, when you ask me about a personal experience, is very interesting, because I have been a very close friend of mine. We have been together, or we have been friends for almost 30 years. When you ask an experience, it's interesting because we had been little by little separating, and our interaction has worsened with time. And what I have found is that when the paths of people, when the values, when the lifestyle changes, our direction and the paths that we choose go sideways. And that's part of life, and it's very difficult to prevent. But I think that when people have different values, when people go in different directions, that of course doesn't work well. I think that also sometimes not being sensitive to reciprocate with the effort or the work that the other person is doing is also something that really hampers relationships, because, I mean, whether we like it to recognize it or not, we tend to abandon or to leave relationships where our needs are not met, whether professional relationships, personal relationships. So I think that when we are very aware of our needs, that makes us also aware of the needs of other people.
Okay. Yeah.
And that which is considered selfish is exactly the opposite. It's very good to know what are our needs and make sure that our needs are met, because when we do that, we're sensitive to the needs of others, and that helps to deepen relationships. And obviously when we don't do that is when things could go south.
Yeah, knowing that you need support in this area, and feeling okay with sharing this part about yourself, and then if that person isn't reciprocal, then maybe they're not a good supporter in your friendship network, basically.
Or,
right?
or we don't resonate in the same tone, if I can put this in musical terms. Our chords, the chords of the guitar, are resonating at different levels, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of overlap between these different topics, but one is the friendship audition process. And in terms of maybe my personal experience, just to share with you as well, I think of, meeting new friends. And these days, I'm more likely to share more because I want to know if that person's a good fit for me. So it's sort of like I won't be, reading them off like a list of things on a piece of paper or anything like that. But I think I'll sort of bring them into the conversation the first or the second time I see them, or something like that, depending on how much they're interested. I'm interested in them, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I mean, it's good when you already have a good friend network. Then okay, if it doesn't work out with this new person, sort of thing, then you got your friends, right? So it's not like you're going from 0 to 1. That's a more vulnerable thing if you have no friends in your life, and then you're putting everything on the line, right?
Yeah.
So you have more confidence when you have some friends, and then sort of like, by the way, this is one thing I'll probably mention in the future, and this is sort of like one of the things I've been struggling with, or things I've been working on, or whatever. One of the projects I'm passionate about, right? So it's like, okay, now you have a picture about me, and you can accept me or reject me, because of this friendship audition process. I think that people go through, even though they don't necessarily call it the friendship audition process. But so I think seeing if someone's a good, deep friend for you, I just skip so much small talk. I mean, with the Meaningful Discussions events that I organize, we kind of skip it anyways.
That's right.
And there's my little plug for Meaningful Discussions for anybody who wants to start in their city. But some people, I guess small talk might be something we can just touch on, really, because a lot of people can't go deep.
Yeah.
And so, even they could see each other or talk to each other every day, but if they never talk about deeper things, are they actually going to have a deeper friendship? Because maybe they will, and I don't. Maybe I'm biased towards deeper conversations.
I don't think so. I don't think that you are biased. I think that you hit the nail in the head, because if we don't want to, I mean, we don't need to go deep all the time, right? But if we don't want to go deep, that might speak about, again, what I mentioned, fear. Fear that you know too much about me, or that you know me really, because there might be the belief that if you know me deeply, you will not like me, or that I am not enough.
Okay.
Or maybe that I am too much. But you see, so we touch upon again the same thing of how much we accept ourselves, how comfortable we are in our own skin. Because if we're not that comfortable, we will not venture into authenticity, which, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I believe that it's one of the ingredients that is required to have a good friendship.
So then it makes me think there's two prerequisites for getting to the point where you can even reveal something vulnerable to somebody else. You need to go through the self-awareness stage, and then you need to go through the self-acceptance stage.
Absolutely.
So 2 stages, and I always say this example, like the self-help books are at the back of the bookstore, behind the fiction, behind the autobiographies of the famous celebrities. So, do you find it's getting better or worse in terms of your clients of getting more used to the whole notion of self-awareness as this first step to even having good friendships in the first place?
Well, I think it's very interesting. The other day I was talking with a friend who is a fellow counselor, and I told him, man, we chose the right profession at this point in time because people are feeling more comfortable in exploring their vulnerability, in becoming more aware of who they are. What are the things, what are the barriers that are limiting them to develop their full potential? And I was telling him, maybe because he is more or less my age, right? And I told him, maybe we will not be able to see it. But nowadays, you tell someone, well, I'm in therapy, or I go to see a counselor, and they will tell you, oops, what's wrong with you? There's still that stigma, that sort of label, but it's changing. Okay. And I personally believe that as time passes by, people will come to a point where, so you are not going to therapy? No. Oh my God, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, just like exercise became more the norm.
Yeah, because people want to be more aware. People want to really explore, and a human being is a very complex
But I mean,
organism, right? So it needs maintenance. It needs exploration and maintenance. Like when you change the oil of your car, you need to do things with yourself as well to maintain yourself healthy.
Definitely. So there's the thing of going into a counselor and getting help that way. But I'm sure you'd recommend, or you have recommended to so many of your clients, to spend alone time in contemplation, and whether it's going for a walk in the forest or whatever, like knowing yourself,
of course,
on your own, and seeing me, because just seeing you is right. So how willing are they to actually do that when you give them that advice? I'm assuming you give them that advice to know yourself better and find what's going on. Like,
I think that it depends, as everything in life, where you are at. It depends on your readiness. It's very interesting because some people work a little bit and then they disappear and then they come back. But it's fascinating to see that there's a point in time when people are just ready. And I personally believe that we as humans, this medical term, homeostasis, I mean, that's the way how you heal from a wound, etc. Emotionally, it also happens. I think that when we initiate a process of personal development, of personal exploration, our own homeostasis processes take us there.
Okay.
It's just when we're ready, and I see more and more people doing that, which is great.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And that helps a lot around their growth, because one of the things that you always ask is, how is your support system? And when you ask, how is your support system, what you're asking in reality is, how much are you interacting with people? How much do you rely on others? How much have you developed meaningful and deep friendships where you feel safe and where you feel supported? Where you have a safety net to rely upon. Right.
By the way, since we touched on small talk, but frequency to me is a big thing. We touched on that a little bit, right?
Yes.
Because I think if you see someone more often than you anticipate seeing them, you can look forward to it, you can look back on, good experiences, and then maybe you can feel more comfortable getting deeper, right? As opposed to if you sort of become friends with this person, but there's no understanding of when you're going to see them again, then, maybe you don't have an incentive to be vulnerable.
Yes, of course, you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
We can be vulnerable when we feel safe.
Yeah. And when there's a regularity, there's a pattern, like you're watering a plant, right? Yeah. That's like, exactly. So do you have a recommendation on how, even just roughly, how often it'd be good for people to hang out if they want a like really deep, close friendship with someone?
It's very difficult, I believe, to say this is the recommended frequency. But I hear your point. I think that the relationships, the friendships need certain frequency, and the indicator is what is needed to keep the relationship alive.
Yeah.
To know what is going on in your life. That doesn't have to happen every week, because we all have very busy lives. That's what is happening lately. But I think that when you feel that there's some distance, that you don't know what is going on with a person, etc., that's an indicator that you need frequency, that you need connection. So a car tells you, I need maintenance, because now there are very sophisticated mechanisms in the car that monitor that. I think that the indicators in a friendship is when we feel that we're disconnecting, when we feel that relevant pieces in our lives or in the life of the other person have not been shared, discussed. So I think that will be a good indicator of, oops, I haven't touched base with this person. And that changes because, for example, when a person is in a critical moment, in a difficult moment, that frequency, I think that needs to change, needs to increase, because that person is in a vulnerable situation. So it's situational, but I think that we can keep a close eye to some indicators, like, for example, distance, disconnection, not knowing what is going on in the life of the other person. And that's what I mentioned at the beginning. Interest and presence is very important.
But, is it fair to say there's like keeping the friendship alive, and then there's taking, like, being really deep and maybe even having a best friend, right? And I won't get too much into the best friend thing, because that's sort of like a separate episode, separate topic. But, to me, like, I see them as two separate levels. Like, stay in touch with friends to have any level of closeness, and then stay in touch with friends to have deep, close, really, And so here's maybe more, and tell me if this is too personal. Hopefully it's not. But, like, maybe it makes it easier to say, like, do you have a specific frequency that you generally go with for your closer friends? Because then, because otherwise, if we're not talking any numbers, then, once a year, I think, is not enough to be close with. Okay, once a day might be too much, right? Okay, so there's got to be something between.
Yeah, good question. And I'm going to answer it a little bit on the other side.
Sure.
What I have observed is not keeping in touch with someone for over a month might be a little bit too much, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to have I feel that it's different to have a very good, or to keep a very good relationship alive and well maintained, so to speak. If you think about 12 interactions in a year, that more or less takes us to an average of 12, right? And I'm talking with my accountant hat right now, but I think that you shouldn't go below that.
Fair, yeah.
Now, there are people that you haven't seen, which is something that happened recently with a very good friend of mine. I didn't see him for I don't know, few years because different reasons. And when we reconnected, it was immediate. It's like that nothing had happened. But that can take to a risk of losing a relationship. So I believe that I will say, to answer concretely your question, that not being in contact with a person shouldn't be more than 3 months.
Yeah.
It's too much.
And that's the thing too. Like if that person you're referring to is someone that you spend a high frequency with many years ago because of school or because of work or something like that, you got your guaranteed frequency. And I think of friendship roots, right? You develop friendship roots that are either plentiful or they're thick or both. And there's a frequency, I think, associated to it, like the science of this analogy of friendship roots. And when you don't have any frequency implied anymore in adult life, you have to be intentional about it, right? Because unless they're a coworker, unless they're taking a class with them, that all your regularity is a given and it's done for you. Like that work almost is like it's planted all the seeds. Yeah. So, but generally, I mean, unless you're lucky enough to have work friends, or that's why I guess a lot of people join activity clubs and things like that. So, but that doesn't mean that they're going to find friends there. So they might find one friend from one club, right? And then now it's the onus is completely on them for the frequency. Correct. And I think a lot of people, and I've found, they expect the other person to do the organizing. Yeah. And if they did the organizing or they do it mostly, they could get sick of being the organizer because they're assuming that the other person's either not being interested in them as an equal friend, like, as with their intentions to be as close, even though the person's just not an organizer. So, just again, be open about, your intentions and like your feelings about, I've been organizing the last couple hangouts, whatever it is. And I noticed you haven't been organizing anything, I'm trying to build up really deep friendships and stuff like that. But it's surprising because we make assumptions. It's always bad when you make assumptions.
I agree with you. And you mentioned something very interesting. I like your analogy about the roots of a tree. I think that it's not only how extended they are, but I think, and we talked about this at the beginning, is how deep they go. Because you see these wonderful trees here in the West Coast, pines and these conifers, this type of trees, and when the wind blows very, very in a very strong fashion, they just fall because they have a lot of extended roots, but not deep roots, which keeps you grounded and strong for the strong winds. Yeah, that happen in life all the time, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to make sure we have time to get into the other questions.
Sure.
Just in terms of my little bit of research from the internet, I found some other, suggestions on how to deepen your friendships. I thought I just mentioned, So do something unexpected with each other. Be maybe spontaneous, whatever. Give them a gift. I'm not sure if I agree completely. Well, it could be all kinds of gifts.
There are many types of
gifts. It doesn't have to be materialistic kind of thing. Talking about something you don't normally talk about. Go on a trip together, watch each other's favorite shows, listen to their favorite music, exchange favorite books, do what they're passionate about with them, take turns talking and listening as opposed to just venting and, that kind of thing, and be brutally honest when they're doing something wrong. That might be the hardest one.
It is.
Okay, so I just, I'm like I said, I'm sort of separating these different episodes, so thank you so much for being on the show. And I'll see you in the next episode.
My pleasure, Glenn. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, then please like and subscribe. And please help to support this project by donating on our Patreon page. Thanks.